Hello, my name's Duane from the Discover Montcalm Podcast, and I'm doing a series on history. I have Don Bauman here from Howard City, and he's going to walk us through some of the history of buildings that used to be. They used to be here, they used to be there, this building was this, was that, and we're going to kind of walk our way through a history of Howard City and a number of videos that will touch on the history, and I hope to be able to do that all around the county and other communities as well. And Don, you were just telling me that, to your knowledge, you are the oldest?
My family may be the oldest still resident of Howard City.
Okay.
As I say, my grandfather came here in 1872 in the fall, and in 1873 he bought the 40 acres a mile south of Howard City on Reed Road, and there's been a Bauman here ever since.
Okay.
I don't know, Stevens might be here as long.
Okay, so but you've been here for a while. You've been here for a while.
Well, my folks, actually, we lived across from the Hinkle house, the big house on the south of town.
Okay.
In a little house there. But there was no electricity in 1939 when I was born. So they came to town on Sherman Street across from Ensley Park, where my aunt lived, because she had electricity, and Doc Hayes was only 4 houses away. So I was born in Howard City.
Okay.
Because of no electricity in the country.
Well, it has to start somewhere. So with that, we'll be back right after this.
Welcome to the Discover Montcalm Podcast, where we are going to look at the communities, the businesses, the attractions, and the people that make up Montcalm County. Here is your podcast host, Duane Weed.
Welcome back to the Discover Montcalm Podcast. Don, kind of give us a bearing of where we are right now.
Well, we're on the west side of what used to be the GR&R Railroad, or the Pennsylvania, or the Penn Central, or the Michigan, whatever they called it after all the others folded. On this side of the railroad, where we are right now, there used to be a creamery. I've never seen it. I haven't seen pictures of it, and a number of other buildings that were associated with shipping stuff on the railroad. I think a couple of places handled hides and chickens and stuff like that. Farther north, over the river and right on the edge of the river, Tamarack Creek, I guess if you'd call it, was Skinner Steamer. It was built up on top of the hill. They were the world's largest manufacturer of sideboards, and they shipped them all by train loads, and it employed a couple hundred men. But at some point, I don't know exactly when, in the early 1900s, maybe 1905 or 1908, in there someplace, they moved that whole building. They tore it down and moved it by sections to Greenville, and it eventually became Gibson's, because it was making, along with the sideboards, they made wooden ice boxes. So as we come back where the depot is today, of course, it was about 3 times longer than that. And what I remember, it was basically what you see there today, except on the north side here that we're looking at, it had a dock that stuck out, and they would unload freight onto it for the hot town. And the hobos that rode the railroad would sleep underneath it, and you could tell when they had been there because their bottles would be left. If you pass across the street from that, on the corner was a gas station, and it was a Sinclair gas station, and Scott's ran it. And next to that, you went on down, and there was a city service station. It was an old wooden one. It burnt, and they built actually the blocks are still there in that current tire station. Next step down was Johnny Johnson's Hardware, and he had a small amount of hardware. He also took in pickles and took pickles to the packing plants, and he had coal. And if you went far way down, there was a factory that made wooden flooring, and I cannot remember the name of it right now, but the gymnasium, the old gymnasium at Howard City, is still got that flooring down, and I had the privilege of talking with guy's name was Fish, and he worked in that plant, and he chose the wood for that floor here a few years ago, and that was really an interesting occasion. I think he got 30 cents an hour was his pay, but I'm not positive.
Right.
As you come back, there was the elevator. It was O'Donnell's elevator, and then in around 1940, Don Bauman bought it, and it was that for a long time, and today the only thing that's left is the office and what was the hardware that went with it. If you come across the street, you see this large white building, and that was a photo studio, and this one end here had a window that was about 8 foot by 12 or more foot with small glass panes, so Minky, the photographer, could take pictures, and he was known all over the country. If you go on down farther, there's a house there that Conrad Kukin is his name, as I always was called, and he'd come every morning with the flag because he was a veteran of, I don't know what, it was before World War II, and there's a big flagpole right here, and it stood for years, and he'd put the flag up and take it down every day. So you'd always see Conrad walking down, back and forth there, and that was kind of interesting. And the one thing that we've missed perhaps is on the corner down here of Munster and what used to be Old 46 was Howard City's power plant, because they produced their own electrical power.
Okay.
And the interesting story I've been told about that was that there was one night they were operating at what was used as a hospital, which was the red house across from the fire station of Howard City right now, and that was called the Golden House, and the blocks, the bricks, and that matched the Golden Hotel, which is here now, and painted white though. And they shut the lights off at 8 o'clock as usual, and they were in the middle of an operation. They sent a runner down to turn them back on.
Yeah. Oh, we have a special case here. We need to make sure that we have power.
Yes, they didn't check that out for some reason. So that kind of covers, except if you went out farther west down Shaw Street, you go to what is now Lepik's, and the fellow that started that was Frank Salufo. He came to Howard in like 1950 or someplace, and he bought the O'Donnell orchard, which was a 40-acre orchard, and then he had approximately, if you think of Lepik's, where the window is for the pharmacy, just in front of that, of course, out at the road, he had a little building that probably wasn't more than 10 by 16 with dilapidated, but he would get damaged food cans, and he started selling food there.
Okay.
And that's how eventually he became an IGA, when he built the current building,
Yep.
much smaller than it is today. It's been had 3 or 4 additions, but Frank Salufo started that there, and that pretty much, I think, takes care of the west side of what it was is Ensley Street. And Ensley Street back in the 1800s was the main thoroughfare, and all of the buildings on it were the commercial buildings or for Howard City, as Edgerton wasn't what it is today. The interesting part is that it burnt once and then they rebuilt it, and I think the second time it was burning, they called Grand Rapids, and Grand Rapids sent up a special train with firefighting equipment on it and helped them put out the fire and save some of the city of Howard City.
And you said that was in the late 1800s? Or early 19s?
Around 1900s, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. I'd have to look and find out when it was.
But still gives us an idea that back then the train was very big. There was was there 2 or 3 railways that came through
well,
here?
there was two railroads that came in here. One, the GR&I, which was Grand Rapids, Indiana Railroad, ran from someplace down in Indiana to, actually I think it stopped at Petoskey. And in 1886, when Howard City was kind of formed, they wanted a depot. And Ensley built the depot in order to encourage the railroad to make this a stop.
Right.
And in order to further encourage it, they named the village Howard City, because the treasurer of the GR&I, his name was Howard. So they used a little influence or a little politics,
yes,
to get it here. There was a town that was trying to rival Howard City called Reynolds, and it was plotted out, and there were 3 or 4 buildings built there about 3 miles north of here, just before you get to 46 today.
Okay.
And it was on this side of the railroad.
Okay.
So that kind of, I think.
Well, that was the North and South Railroad, but
Yeah.
there was one that came.
One that came
from
in was, what was the name now?
Pierre Marquette or
Pierre
something?
Marquette is what it was best known for. And it started in Greenville and came through Truffant, Coral, came to Howard City, and made a loop on that side of the depot, and then went that way north.
And in the,
and then
in
it
the
headed
creek there, you
east.
can see the foundation for where a bridge used to be.
Yeah, well,
I don't know if that's the actual
no, that's
railroad.
not the bridge. That's the Howard. That was a road. That used to be 131. that bridge.
But in the water there, you can see where there's foundations that there might have been.
Oh, maybe.
You know. But anyways,
that ran to Amble, and then from Amble to Lakeview, and then from there to Edmore, and went over, and I think it ended up in Bay City.
okay.
But it made that loop, and it was here until, well, they tore up the tracks during the war to use the steel for
okay.
tanks or whatever.
Okay.
And if you go right over here to where the tire place is, there used to be a large water tower there, a wooden one, similar to the one that's in Grant today, if you're
I've
familiar
been by
with
it.
it.
Yep.
Just like that. And in the center of the, between the two tracks, there was a filling platform, and they would fill the steam engines with water here.
Okay.
And I used to sit in the elevator door and watch those trains get water, and it was quite a sight. In wintertime, that tank had an overflow, and it would quite often overflow. So there'd be an icicle from 30 feet in the air down to the ground that might end up being 4 or 5 foot in diameter. And
Just
we'd
like if
there.
you go up to Mackinac, there's a fountain there, and in the wintertime, they keep it going, and it ends up being a big ice sculpture,
Yeah,
you know, because they had to keep the water flowing. So
Well,
same
this-
thing here, right?
same thing. And that was tore down in the 50s, but I don't know, exactly when.
Okay.
And that just about, I think, covers this side.
Well, we've been talking about the west side, and before we wrap up this portion, growing up here, you talked about, watching the trains and the, get the water and that kind of thing. What are some of your fondest memories of being in Howard City? I take it was it larger than what it is today?
No, it isn't any larger.
I mean, as far as more buildings
It
and
might have
that?
been more, there were more buildings on Main Street.
Okay.
And Main Street was far more active than it is today. Excuse me. The one thing I remember that I forgot to mention is right over there in the park, about where that dog is, and the person sitting a little out towards the road. During World War II, they built a monument, and I wish I could find pictures of it, of World War II people, veterans.
okay.
And they would list the veterans, whether they was, I think, an octagon, and they had a 4x8 sheet surrounded the thing. And the front one was a flag and all the different symbols of the United States. On either side were the Army and the Navy, and they listed all the people that were in it.
Okay.
The Navy, and then they had a place where they listed those that had been lost.
Okay.
And I used to play underneath that thing because it was built about 2 foot off the ground, and you could crawl under as a little kid. And it was just one of those memories I have of playing there. But probably the biggest memory is coming up on Saturday night. First of all, Howard City, basically your stores would be open from 8 in the morning till 6 at night. Thursday afternoons they were closed. And Saturday night they'd be open until 8 o'clock, or maybe it was even 9.
Yeah.
But we'd come uptown and they were all benches, and you knew 3/4 of the people.
Yeah.
And you sat and talked with different ones, and they'd come in, bring in eggs and whatever else and sell them to the stores and trade. And the thing I really remember was, the building's gone now, but Jim Harris had an appliance store over here.
Okay.
And in 1948, 49, he had a little 10-inch TV in the front window. Everybody would be there looking at TV.
Sure.
Because, and I think there was 2 channels.
Well, and we're going to go downtown in another episode, and you're going to walk me through the buildings and what was and what it changed to, because at one time I understand there was multiple hardware, there was a couple, 3 grocery stores.
Yep.
But we'll get into more detail on that. So Don, thank you for your time today. My name is Duane. I'm the host and producer of the Discover Montcalm Podcast, and you'll be catching more episodes with Don as we go around Howard City and we talk about the history in Montcalm County. We are tracking down some things that'll take us around the county, but this is going to be an ongoing, I guess, goal of mine. And with Don being so gracious of his time, we're going to see if we can get some more history. So on that note, remember to buy and shop locally.
The Discover Montcalm podcast wants to thank West Michigan Technology and Design Solutions, WGLM 106.3 FM, DW Video, and Business Growth Engine. Thank you for your support.